Did not attempt to contact me at all. When I did contact him to try to set up a time for him to have visitation with Connor, he said he wasn't available and he postponed it, and then he never tried to reschedule the visitation. After I moved to Grapevine, I started seeing an old friend of mine from school that I'd known from elementary school. He was very supportive of me and helped me to make a lot of positive changes in my lifestyle. I started a vegetarian diet and a regular exercise routine. I got healthy. I lost close to 40 pounds in a matter of just a few months. My children were happy and healthy and eating well, and things were really looking up for me and for my family until December 15th. As I said before, that day I had 3 constables come to my door. They informed me that they were authorized to take Connor from my custody and hand him over to my husband, who was waiting outside to take him back to Lubbock. I was devastated and completely in shock. The officers did serve me a paper that stated that Connor was being removed from my home because they thought that I was a flight risk, and also stated that I was living with a convicted felon. Of course, neither of these accusations was true. I did later present evidence in court that disproved them. I immediately started making phone calls, and I retained a lawyer in Lubbock to help me get my son back. After that, I found out that Ben had filed for divorce, but he didn't know where I was working. He thought I was working at the Walmart in Grapevine, so the process server went to the Grapevine Walmart and served my papers to another employee named Amy. Her name is Amy Spears. Needless to say, I was not aware of the court date that was scheduled, and so I failed to appear. And since I was unable to defend myself in court, the judge sided with Ben and ruled that he should have temporary custody of Connor. My lawyer filed a motion for a new hearing, which was granted with the same judge from the first hearing, and we went to court on January 30th, 2012. During the hearing, there was no court reporter present, so I'm not aware if there's even a transcript, if that exists at all. I did present evidence of Ben's drug use. I brought in the pictures that you saw, as well as evidence that I had no reason to flee, nor was I living with anyone other than my children. I brought in documentation of my transfer with Walmart and the raise that I received when I moved to Grapevine. Ben's lawyer came in and submitted printouts of posts that I had made on Facebook, and he used those to try to prove that I was in a relationship with another man and that that man was taking care of me and my children. Throughout the trial, the focus was on Ben and his lawyer's accusations that I was in a relationship with someone else, and how that apparently made me an unfit parent. In the end, the judge looked at my husband and told him, if you're growing and selling drugs, stop it. He ruled that Ben had the more stable environment for Connor and allowed him to keep temporary custody of my son. That day I was allowed a 2-hour visit with Connor. I had not seen him since December 15th. I spent 2 hours with my son, and I went home devastated and empty-handed. The temporary orders that were put in place after the second hearing also said that I was to take my income tax return, the entire amount, and put it in escrow to be split with Ben after the divorce was finalized. Unfortunately, when I moved, I had to replace everything that I left behind in Lubbock after Ben locked me out of my house. So I needed money to replace all my stuff. I needed money to pay my lawyer. So I was really unable to surrender my tax return. That was all I had. Since this did violate the court order, my lawyer decided that she was going to withdraw from the case. Now, I was without my child. I had no representation to help me get him back. In the months that followed the hearing, was contacted by an officer in the Narcotics Division of Lubbock Police Department. The bailiff that had been in the courtroom during the hearing had called the Lubbock Police Department and reported Ben for growing and selling marijuana. He couldn't believe that there was no investigation or nobody looked into it. So they called me and informed me that they were conducting an investigation. I gave them all the information that I had. I was also contacted by Child Protective Services. They had received reports that there were drugs and weapons in the house and that Connor might be in danger. During this time, I was only allowed to see my son one weekend out of the month, when Ben would meet me halfway in Abilene. I asked him to let me see him more often, but he refused. He refused to meet me. The first few visits that I had with Connor were very stressful. Every time I got him, he was sick. He was emotionally distressed. He was clinging to me constantly and cried excessively. The only word that he would say the whole time, all he would say was "Mama." When Connor was living in my home in November, he was happy and healthy, and he weighed right around 29 pounds. Here's a picture of him right before he was removed from my home. When I finally got visitation with him in February, he weighed 22 pounds, and he would cry if I even left the room. This is a picture of him probably around that time. You can see he's upset because I'm not holding him. This is another one. See how much skinnier he is in that picture. He was also sick at that time. And he's hanging onto my legs there. He didn't want to let me go. There were several times that Ben canceled or rescheduled my visitation because Connor was sick and he had to take him to the doctor. When I got Connor for spring break on March 10th, Ben told me that he'd been sick. He'd been throwing up for 3 days. After 2 more days of him vomiting and being listless, and I took him to the emergency room. They treated him for a stomach virus, and his weight at the hospital then was still 22 pounds. This is us in the emergency room. When I got him for my summer visitation, which started on June 1st, he still weighed 22 pounds at 19 months old. During the 6 weeks that I had Connor this summer, his father never called to talk to him or try to check on him. He did come to pick him up for Father's Day weekend. I picked him up on Friday and then texted actually, and asked me to pick him up about 3 hours earlier than scheduled on that Sunday, which was Father's Day. He did not request another visit with Connor during their whole time period of 6 weeks. 6 months after our first hearing in January, they finally set a date for mediation and a final hearing. During this time, I've been trying to get legal aid with no result. They told me that they didn't have anyone available to represent me. So I drove to Lubbock for my mediation on July 25th, where my husband and his lawyer tried to offer me forgiveness of my financial obligations if I would agree to let Ben keep primary custody of my son and give him my car. I explained to the mediator then that I would never trade money for my child, and at that point the mediation was ruled an impasse. Now at this point I have a court date scheduled for August 29th. I have no legal representation. I do not have funds to hire a lawyer. I've gotten no support from the state or any of its agencies. My children are the most important thing in my life, and my heart is just heavy, and when I consider the fact that I might not get my son back, and that my daughter might grow up without her brother, and that my son might grow up and not know his sister. Right now, Connor is in custody of a mentally unstable, violent, angry drug dealer, and he should never have been removed from my home in the first place. I am a good mother and I love my children immensely, and all I want is to put my family back together, and I'll do whatever it takes to make that happen. I've tried, I've exhausted every avenue I know, and I've been turned away every time. So now I'm asking for your help. If you can offer financial assistance, or if you know someone who can, if you know a lawyer who'd be willing to take my case, or if you have advice, if you can offer any help at all, I'd ask you to please contact me. This is my name, Amy Reddick, and my email address, connorsmom3@gmail.com. If there's anything that you can do to help, please let me know. Thank you.